Here's a question worth sitting with. What's the most destructive invasive species in human history? Most people guess an animal. A snake, a toad, something that bites. But the real answer is a list of plants you eat every single day. Crops we domesticated thousands of years ago that turned out to have the root systems, the chemical output, and the reproductive speed of something built for total ecological dominance. We're going through 10 of them today, and by the end, a grocery store is going to look very different to you. Before we move on, please take a moment to subscribe to the channel and like the video. Number 1, wheat. Roughly 220 million hectares of Earth's surface grows wheat right now. That's more land than the entire country of Greenland, and almost none of it grew wheat 10,000 years ago. Wheat didn't win because early farmers loved it most. Those farmers in the Fertile Crescent ate dozens of wild plants. Wheat won because of what it does to everything growing around it. Its roots run deep and dense, pulling moisture from soil layers that shallower plants can't reach. And it tillers aggressively, meaning one seed sends up multiple shoots that crowd out neighbors before they even get started. Farmers kept seeds from the most aggressive spreaders without knowing what they were actually building. Generation after generation, they selected for more tillers, more grain, more drought tolerance. The ecological cost shows up clearly. Wheat's root mat rewires the soil's fungal networks, crowding out the mycorrhizal systems that native plants depended on. That's not farming, that's occupation. Number 2, rice. Rice didn't just adapt to flooded fields. It trained farmers to flood them, and that's a distinction worth sitting with. Most competing plants drown when their roots sit in waterlogged soil. Rice doesn't, because it evolved in wetland margins with a built-in plumbing system called parenchyma tissue. Basically internal air channels that carry oxygen straight down to the roots, even when the soil around them has none. The moment a farmer floods a paddy, every weed dies and rice wins by default. The flooding isn't just irrigation. It's a weapon the plant essentially taught humans to deploy. The landscape transformation that followed is hard to process. Entire mountain slopes in Southeast Asia were carved into terraces to hold water for rice, and humans moved that much earth because rice kept rewarding them for it. That same waterlogged soil produces methane continuously through the growing season, because the anaerobic conditions that kill competing plants also feed methane-producing microbes. The plant's survival trick and its biggest ecological cost run on exactly the same biology. Number 3, maize. Most people don't know this about corn. It produces a class of compounds called benzoxazinoids that leak into the soil from its roots and actively suppress the germination of competing plants. That's not passive competition. It's chemical warfare, running continuously underground while the crop grows above. Maize evolved in the highlands of Mexico, where it faced brutal pressure from other grasses, and the benzoxazinoid system was its answer. When we started planting it in dense monocultures, we amplified that chemical output across millions of acres. Studies have measured these compounds in agricultural soils at concentrations that measurably cut the germination rates of dozens of native plant species. The Corn Belt was once tallgrass prairie, oak savanna, and wetland, one of the most biodiverse temperate ecosystems on the planet. The passenger pigeon fed heavily on that landscape. It's extinct now. The prairie chicken nearly followed. Number 4, potato. The potato's biological trap was built into its own reproduction. Nearly every potato grown for centuries was a clone, genetically identical to every other potato in the ground. So when Phytophthora infestans, a water mold that spreads through cool, wet air, hit Ireland's fields in the 1840s, it found no resistance anywhere. Leaves melted and turned brown within days. Tubers rotted into a reddish-brown slime by the end of the week. About 1 million people died, and another million left the country. The clonal strategy that made potatoes so vulnerable also made them so productive. A potato plant puts everything into tuber production because it doesn't waste energy on genetic variation through seed. That's what fed dense rural populations in the first place, and it's exactly what left them with no fallback when the pathogen arrived. Number 5, sugarcane. Sugarcane uses a carbon-fixing process called C4 photosynthesis. which lets it convert sunlight into biomass faster than almost any other crop in hot conditions. That biological edge is part of why it spread so far, but the other part is harder to look at. The plant grows in dense stands up to 4 meters tall, with sharp-edged leaves and a fibrous stalk that has to be cut by hand at the base. Mechanizing that process took until the 20th century, so colonial economies did the math and decided to force other people to do it instead. A large share of the transatlantic slave trade, roughly 12 million people moved from Africa to the Americas, ran on sugar plantation labor. The C4 efficiency that makes sugarcane so productive also lets it shut out any native regrowth trying to reclaim cleared land. It doesn't just occupy a field, it holds it. Number 6, cotton. Cotton is a shrub, a woody perennial that produces fiber around its seeds to help them disperse on the wind, and humans figured out how to spin that fiber. And from that point, the plant's biology and human economics got impossible to separate. The American South before cotton was longleaf pine forest, bottomland hardwood, coastal wetland. By 1860, cotton had replaced most of the productive lowland soil across Georgia, Alabama, Mississippi, and into Texas. The plant pulled nitrogen out of the ground relentlessly, so farmers planted it on the same fields until the soil gave out, then moved west and started again. That longleaf pine ecosystem once covered around 90 million acres and supported species like the red cockaded woodpecker and the gopher tortoise. It's down to roughly 3% of its original range now, and the soil cotton left behind was too depleted for longleaf to grow back even after the cotton was gone. The gin didn't just process fiber, it committed the land. Number 7, tobacco. Every other plant on this list spread because it fed people, clothed them, or fueled something. Tobacco spread because it's addictive, and that's a different mechanism entirely. Nicotine is an insecticide. The tobacco plant produces it in its leaves to kill insects that try to eat them, binding to receptors in insect nervous systems and shutting them down fatally. In humans at lower doses, it triggers dopamine release instead, and that reinforcement loop is what built a global market. Traders figured out fast that tobacco was easy to sell because buyers always came back. Within a century of European contact with the Americas, tobacco was being grown and smoked across Europe, Africa, Asia, and the Middle East. The plant used human neurobiology as a distribution network, and around 6 million people die from tobacco use every year because of it. Number 8, coffee. Tobacco spread through addiction. Coffee spread through something subtler. It changed when humans were awake and what they did with that time. The coffee houses of 17th century London and Istanbul weren't just places to drink something hot. They were the first spaces where people from different social classes sat together for hours, sober, and actually talked. Caffeine made that possible. Coffea arabica evolved as an understory shrub in Ethiopia's highland forests, and it produced caffeine for the same reason tobacco produced nicotine: to kill insects. But caffeine also suppresses competing seeds in the soil around the plant. Another chemical trick that humans dragged into plantation monoculture without fully understanding what they were moving. Sun-grown coffee plantations stripped away the forest canopy the plant evolved under, and the migratory bird populations that wintered in those highland zones collapsed along with it. Number 9, tea. 3 billion cups of tea get drunk every day, making Camellia sinensis the most consumed plant beverage on Earth after water. That's a small evergreen shrub native to the forests of Yunnan province in China, and it's been under cultivation long enough that its wild relatives are now genuinely hard to find. Britain couldn't grow enough of it, so the East India Company pushed opium into Chinese markets to cover the cost. And when China pushed back, Britain fought 2 wars to keep that trade open. The Opium Wars reshaped Chinese sovereignty over a shrub. When Britain finally grew its own tea in Assam, planters cleared the native forest, including wild Camellia sinensis variety Assamica growing in the understory, to plant uniform rows for maximum yield. The disease-resistant traits they destroyed in those wild plants are what tea breeders are desperately searching for in remaining forest remnants today. Number 10, rubber tree. Every tire, surgical glove, engine gasket, and elastic band for most of the 20th century came from one tree, Hevea brasiliensis, native to the Amazon basin. Not a family of trees, one species. The rubber tree produces latex as a wound response. Damage the bark and latex flows out, hardens, seals the cut, and traps whatever caused it. Rubber tappers exploit that repair mechanism by making shallow diagonal cuts that never fully heal, so the tree just keeps producing. Its own biology turned into an industrial supply chain. When rubber tree seeds got moved to Southeast Asia, the fungal disease that limits plantation density back in the Amazon didn't travel with them. So growers planted trees as dense as they wanted, and yields went through the roof. Thailand, Indonesia, and Malaysia now produce roughly 90% of the world's natural rubber across millions of hectares of cleared rainforest. The pathogen still hasn't arrived. When it does, the math changes completely.